when I went forward with my conversation with ChatGPT was to ask what it saw about me.
This is a very general kind of set of life goals, but it'll give you some thoughts about the kinds of things that might end up on your request.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? It is Thursday, November 14th, and you're watching the Daily AI Show live. And today is another Use Case Thursday. We are bringing you another example of how you can make AI actionable in your own life to create real world, not just virtual, experiences for yourself that you desire. And specifically what we're talking about right now comes from a post from Allie Miller on X. She posted on October 21st, and the post was basically, it's bonkers that I can write all my life goals on a sheet of paper, take a photo of it, and just ask Claude or ChatGPT to help. And I get a plan, milestones, KPIs, motivation, even an action support to get there. And less than 5% of the world is using the AI assistants in general. Much fewer will do something like this. Even fewer will put it into action, right? So that's one of the differentiators. That's one of your first embracer? Yes, whatever that phrase is that I'm trying to come up with, that's one of your advantages, right? If you are someone who sees what's happening already and can take advantage of it, that's a huge advantage for you. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about why it's important, things that we know about how to do these sorts of things. And again, like, this wasn't even a thought out this wasn't even a well thought out thing. She just wrote down stuff on a piece of paper, took a picture of it, gave it to an AI that has vision and could interpret that, and then off to the races, right? So with me today are Andy, Jyunmi, Karl, and I am Beth, and we're going to explore today why this matters, how it works, and how you can specifically take advantage of this, because that is really what we're about here. So we're gonna dive in. I'm gonna ask Andy to give us a little bit of an overview, but for you who are potentially watching this, go ahead and write down a goal. If you could write down any goal on a piece of paper right now, you don't have to do it on paper, you could actually key it in. Knowing that AI could help you create a detailed roadmap to achieve it, what would you do? What is your North Star? What do you want to find? So what do you want to have actionable in your life in 9 months, in a year, in 3 years, in 5 years? And we would love to hear from you. Go ahead and drop it in the comments. And if you're watching later, go ahead and send it to us. Andy, give us a foundation for this conversation.
Okay. I'm at the sort of the far end of the achievement of life goals, meaning I don't have a lot of life goals left, but I wanted to give you a little assist in deciding what kind of life goals you might want to pursue, no matter what age you're at. And then in addition, I want to just say that what I'm going to be providing is some generic high order life goals that everybody has. And the approach that I took to this was to ask ChatGPT O1 preview specifically to search its knowledge, determine what the humans are using as their life objectives in all kinds of sources, and then order them in order of practical, probable achievement. So what are the things that are probably going to be achievable in your lifetime, and all the way down to the ones that are a little more difficult, because there's a trade-off. You're probably going to have, as you do your little vision board of the things that you want to achieve in your life, you're going to have a number of competing goals that actually, you can't fit them all into the time available, given all the distractions and deflections, as I call them. And I also asked ChatGPT to list with each of the high order life goals what the typical sources of deflection from achieving those goals are. So I'm going to just read them. It came up with 13 for men, and I think it has the same number for women. Let me see here. And I'll comment about the gender differences there. No, there were only 8 for women, interestingly. Is it 13 for men, 8 for women? And then I challenged GPT to evaluate why there's a discrepancy in number and also a high degree of similarity in the 8 that are common between the two. So, ready? I'm going to get ready to take notes here because these are the things that people have as high order life goals. Completing an education. And that can apply even later in your life where you want to learn something new or get a new qualification. So that's one. And number 2 is establishing a career. That's a major life goal for young people, particularly. Achieving financial stability. Maintaining health and wellness. Number 5 is building meaningful relationships. 6, pursuing personal passions and hobbies. By the way, burnout and time constraints and prioritizing the higher, more essential objectives of getting to financial stability in a career typically deflect pursuit of passion and hobbies. Owning a home. Likely sources of deflection of that one are, for example, high property prices, insufficient savings, or unstable income. All those things make home ownership challenging. Starting a family. Financial concerns, career focus, or personal choices may delay family planning. Achieving career advancement or recognition within your established career. Number 10, planning for retirement. 11, contributing to community or society. This is an interesting one. Many have a sort of a very enlightened goal of contributing, giving back. And one of the deflections there was lack of awareness about opportunities, which could reduce your involvement in the community and so on. Travel and exploration, and finally, personal growth and self-improvement. I'm going to jump ahead just quickly to wrap up this sort of overview of the kinds of things we talk about when we speak of life goals, and just say the differences that ChatGPT evaluated across females and males. I'm just going to use one, which is establishing a career and achieving career advancement. That's a common goal, common life goal. And you need to have the assistance of a good AI assistant to really figure out the specifics of how that would be done in your industry and in your particular role in your organization and your career. But here's some differences in terms of what affects the ability to achieve that for females as compared to males. For females, workplace biases. Women may face gender discrimination, glass ceiling, and limited opportunities due to systemic biases. So that's something that AI might be able to advise you on how to circumvent. Work-life balance challenges. Balancing career with family responsibilities, such as childcare, can interrupt career progression. These become obvious when you hear them, but it's really good about one of the things I love about AI is it really gives you a very thorough and well-organized perspective on the questions that you're posing to it and asking for assistance with. And then finally, limited mentorship and networking. There may be fewer role models or mentors, not mentals, fewer role models and mentors for women in the workplace than there are for men. And that can affect professional growth. All right. So final comment. This is a very general kind of set of life goals, but it'll give you some thoughts about the kinds of things that might end up on your request. But now AI can go down deep into the specifics of how to execute that in a time-based series of steps that are needed to achieve that.
Really interesting. And I love the specificity of it because at some point you're going to need the specificity and you're going to need the heads up, I think, as you're saying, of the kinds of things that can get in the way and distract. I'm not sure that it's all that surprising, but but the first thing that I did when I went forward with my conversation with ChatGPT was to ask what it saw about me. right? Based on what I'm telling you, give me some feedback on what you're seeing. And then we went into almost an immediate conversation about what do I want to feel versus what are the like specific goal kind of thing. What is the number in the bank? No. Why am I saying that number in the bank? And what do I want to feel about that? Because in my experience, and I did counseling in another lifetime, that you're more likely to achieve the goals if you are meeting your emotional needs all the way through the journey than if you're waiting for the emotional need to be met at the end of the journey. And that turned the pie in the sky goals into some really interesting things. So I love the specificity, Andy, and mine ended up being somewhat specific, but also not. Jyunmi, how did you go about this preparing for this show?
So I wanted to jump off of just, taking a quick analysis of Allie's posts and essentially taking everything that she said and run it through Perplexity. Right. And just do an analysis of what are the kinds of things that she's talking about, and how does it apply to my life or just life in general. And so that process was a little eye-opening in the fact that there were some definitions, some terms and things like that gave me a launching off point to identify here's a path that I can now explore. And I think that that's the biggest benefit or advantage that I get is having a good starting off point and then building on top of that to get me more responses. Like the first thing I thought of when we were thinking about this show was okay, well, it's time to have a conversation. I've got advanced voice now, so let's sit down and have a conversation. What can ChatGPT or what can that conversation, what can come out of that conversation, right? Or what can Chat draw out of me if I'm not looking to answer a specific question, right? And I think that's a barrier for a lot of people is, hey, I don't know what I don't know, and I don't know what I need to analyze myself, so to speak. And so Chat's really good as a wall to bounce those kinds of things off of. So that was my basic takeaway and approach.
Thanks, Jyunmi. Go ahead. And Chad is saying if you could turn your mic up a little bit, that would be awesome. Karl, where are you in this? Have you used ChatGPT or something to do your goal achievements?
Not really for personal, but more so for our business. So we have our business co-pilot. I think we've interviewed ourselves where we want to go, where we want to see this, and then essentially just come up with those 3 to 5 year plan for our company and where we want to take this. And then it's nice to have the ability to have the web search and connect that and see where things are going, how our company's connected to it, and see where we're planning. That's really as much as we do with goal planning in terms of.
So what I find interesting is that that mine was a little bit of a crossover, right? So same thing. Mine was really very much about business planning because in terms of life planning, that is a significant portion of what we want to do. And I suspect for the people who are watching us, it's also something key on your life trajectory, right? You have specific goals that you want to hit and milestones you want to hit in your business, in your professional life. And did you, Karl? So you run a business with your partner, and do you put together an action plan? Like, how do you have a strategic plan and your milestones and those sorts of things that you're that you're hitting?
Yeah, because so we've I think we've just had our officially our kind of our anniversary where we incorporated. Like, so we've obviously, we've ran a business plan, so we had to review, hey, what have we done since? Obviously right now we're still in full growth. We kind of know where we're going. We, the companies that we're targeting, still meeting. So we're still on that path. But I think I've noticed with the AI a little bit, or actually kind of a lot, that it isn't the normal trajectory that you could say with a SaaS company or like really any business, because the unpredictability of where the thing is, where the space is going, you're kind of not sure. So it's you can't really put together a 5-year, like our 5 years, like this is where we want to be. But even then you're like, I don't know what that means, because let's go back to the 5 levels of AI from OpenAI. So what does that mean if the Sam Altman interview with Gary Tan at YC Combinator, if he says AGI is going to come next year, well, what does that mean? What happens when agents comes? Like, how does that impact our business significantly? We're hoping that a lot of businesses kind of like, oh crap, this is happening. And then, the amount of presentations we've done, it's like, oh, who's the one group that has met with us when no one has? Well, these guys. But again, we don't know. So we have a plan, but we also have to think about in this world, and maybe that, that's a place where we could actually take this is, if we look at goals and personal planning, that's the assumption the world stays as is. With how AI is trending, and we're all believers in where it's going in 3, 5, 7 years, next year, how does that impact our goal planning if that type of disruption happens? If an AI can take over an entire organization, then how does our goals change? Everyone's goals would be up.
That's a very interesting point, Karl, because I've asked the question to AIs before, what does it look like in the future when AIs can do this? And I think it will come up with an answer, and it's going to be based on some futurist documentation that's in its deep learning. And yet, I think it's a flat side of AI generally to be a prognosticator. It's really good at looking rearward and understanding context, but anticipating what the impacts are, that's more difficult as a thought process. And I think they'll get better at that. And it's already able to say, okay, it gives you a kind of a generic answer, which is, these jobs are going to go away, but they're going to be, there's going to be lots of jobs for people to oversee AI doing, that it's all going to change that way, but it doesn't really have a notion about the requirement of humanity to have economic output that gets compensation for them and buys food and puts it on the table. So it doesn't have that natural understanding. I wanted to quickly mention that in companies that I've run, we have a goal execution management process, right? It's typically a quarterly process. And every single department has to come up with OKRs, objectives and key results, and that down to the individual. Each individual has to have a schedule of at least 4 or 5 objectives and key results that they're going to execute on in that quarter. And their bonus compensation is partly based on achieving a high level of completion on each of those ones that they've basically signed up for in agreement at the beginning of the quarter. I think AI, I haven't seen anybody offering a tool like that. There are big, enterprise platforms for doing goal execution management. And Beth, you probably know about some that are available within the Salesforce ecosystem of tools that are used to manage sales process and other departments. But I think AI could do a really good job at determining what measurable and aligned objectives should be for a department, at least. And then maybe even with specific understanding of the actual organization chart and the roles and functions that are currently being performed by the people in that chart, come up with a really good first draft of what the next quarter's OKR should be, all the way down to the employee.
So this is a really good place for us to also pivot in this conversation. And I really appreciate the OKRs, Andy, and what you're saying, because one of the other ways that Allie suggested, thanks Allie for the show, because we're having a great conversation. One of the other things that Allie suggested was you build a custom chatbot, you build a custom GPT on your, just like fully on your goals, on your OKRs, on the things that you need to hit. And then you bring it into the conversation, because in ChatGPT, you can add a custom GPT into your current conversation to have, to just have that additional perspective. And how amazing would it be for all of us to be able to just outsource that perspective, right? We've done it. We've done the work. Now that custom GPT is holding that as the perspective, and all you have to do is bring it in. Like, hey, okay, so I'm looking at this. How does that impact the OKRs for this quarter, right? How does that impact what we are talking about as a goal? And then that brings in that perspective, right? And you can do that in all kinds of ways. So maybe you have this custom GPT based on the goals of your department and your personal milestones that you want to hit for your employment. Maybe you also have one for the professional authority that you are building, right? So now we've got the business for your employment. We've got that perspective. Now, how can we use the same thing that we're going to do, but use it to advance how authoritative I appear in my business networks, in my professional networks? Now we bring that custom GPT in, because that has that goal, right? It makes, as someone with ADHD, I can be brilliant and also scattered. It makes the things that you have to hold in your head to move forward as a fully unified human, I guess. It outsources that, and that is incredibly helpful for me. Andy, what do you think?
I agree. And I like the expression fully rounded or fully organized human. That reminds me that there is a hierarchy of goals in an organization. And one of the goals can be all the way down at the individual employee level, creating the conditions in which they will pursue their own personal advancement as part of their job satisfaction. And that's an enlightened view of organization. But I want to just say, as we've been talking, I've been thinking about the idea of using a gang of AIs, in effect, in a complete application for small businesses to organize their achievement of their overall objective as a company. And that overall objective typically has to start with the financial objective. Like, you don't want to end up being a really well-balanced organization, but failing on the profitability side, right? So companies need to generate profit and growth in order to be thriving. And so you start with that, and AI can begin that whole process by saying, here, looking in the rearview mirror, is the actual situation. Over the last 3 quarters, our margin of contribution has declined. So the first order of business, the first objective of this next quarter is to arrest the decline in profit margin. Okay. On the margin, every single dollar that's being generated is actually giving less and less profitability to the bottom line rather than more and more, which is what should happen when you're growing. So identifying what the current situation is, that starts at the CEO level and then becomes the highest order goal. Now I give the AI this as the sort of the prime directive. I need to achieve this level of operating efficiency in order to do that. I can do that tell me how I can do that. And the AI will come back and say, hey, look, you can grow higher margin product lines. You can trim lower margin product lines. You can, become more productive per employee. You can do that by giving them better tools like AI and getting a higher level of output from individual employees. Or you might find that you can use AI to reduce the number of headcount and on the payroll, which is the most expensive part of almost every company, in order to achieve those objectives. Then that's the starting point. You have to begin with that, and then AIs at the department level have to fit into that objective. And the AI could marshal that whole process. The AI could say, okay, well, here's the objective, and now here's what I think this department ought to be doing. Here's a list of 5 things that could be OKRs at the department level in order to improve the situation that I've evaluated. This is just really good management, certainly within the capabilities of the more advanced AIs, but I haven't yet seen one that's designed to operate at that level, although my colleague Karl is building business co-pilots that at least on a query response basis can provide a lot of advice in alignment with this vision that I'm providing. But I'm looking for the fully automated CEO AI assistant that provides this goal execution process and management in real time as you proceed through the quarter to say, hey, we're ahead on this one, we're behind on this one, you need to pay attention to this one today.
Karl, unmute.
You're silent, Karl.
Ooh.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, there it is. Okay. I had to unmute and mute again. I don't know. Anyway, it's interesting that every single time we have a conversation, it generally leads back to the one person, $1 billion me every single time, because we're building our own things. But, I was having a conversation with somebody at a SaaS company, and to this day, I think her exact words were, hey, how did we come up with the OKRs for next quarter? One of the directors said, or managers, someone said, I think it was a gut feeling. It's like, it's a gut feeling we're going to go. It's like, oh, goodness, you have all this data. You have PhD level reasoning that can do amazing math, science, STEM, everything. And the best you can do is feeling. I was like, you might as well close up shop. Like that's the end of you. What's interesting, I was reading some of our and I think Jude had a good. So Jude's point about just hire lazy. Has anyone seen the Apple Intelligence ads that kind of got panned, where the guys just sitting around essentially, hey, and it was kind of panned because they positioned intelligence as if it, like, you can be lazy because this guy wasn't doing any work, and you can be lazy and Apple Intelligence does all the that was up. But I think the comment that Gwen had about she weren't able to meet some of her goals, I think that's an awesome idea, because how many times have we've seen companies, and you've seen this, Beth, and you've seen this, Andy, where, hey, you've done an OKR. You either met it or you didn't meet it, but you never have been able to do sort of a retrospective, because you're already planning the next quarter or whatever everyone's looking forward. So wouldn't it be awesome it's not that hard, because you have your GPT or what projects or whatever you've created to set you that goal. And then you could just come back and say, okay, well, it's been 3 months. Here's our metrics. Here's our numbers from what we've set. Here's our goals. We didn't meet them. Could you help me understand why? And then it would take the 2 documents that you provided. Hopefully it's consistent. And then it would ask you questions. It would be problem like, hey, ask me questions so you can understand. And then you ask questions. And then it goes, okay, help me plan, based on Q2 because we always go quarter over quarter, year over year, month over month. So can you help me understand quarter over quarter, month over month to be consistent and to compare apples to apples? What are some things that I think I did? And then based on all the questions, it's like having that retrospective because no one has time to, but you have time to, or your director has time to, or your manager has time to, and just have that. And with voice, you could just have that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And that introspective alone, that retrospective can help you out that your entire team can't do. And, as I talk about this is something awesome that I think we'll be doing for our company because, most companies have really complex Excel spreadsheets, Google Sheets about all these goals and metrics. Well, you can feed that in and feed in the exact same at the end of the quarter, at the end of the year, and just have that conversation. So I think that's like some things that you could do both personally and professionally too.
Mm-hmm. And I love that idea. And part of what you're getting at in that is not just using AI to plan, but also to do the analysis, the gap analysis, right? And the gap analysis can be, so what I've laid out as a goal, where are more opportunities in there? Like what's the gap analysis there? But as you move forward and do the retrospective, you're going to be able to, and again, in this age of change, this is like, again, a superpower. You're going to be able to, start to see the small and sometimes large shifts you need to make based on the environment that you are achieving your goal in, right? So part of that gap analysis may be like, oh, we thought this was faster. We didn't have enough time laid out for all of the time that goal was going to take. Or the gap analysis is we misunderstood the motivation of people to take action right now. Right? People want to have conversations that make them feel better. They don't necessarily want to make the change. So, all right, then that's a piece. How do you build that into your process? And as you continue to do the retrospectives and the planning, you may very well and ideally have those two visions come closer together so that you're being more accurate in your moving forward. Yeah. Andy, and Jyunmi, I'm not sure. Jump in if you can.
Yeah, I want to comment on a chat message here from Jude. There are AI assisted project management tools, right? Making sure business partners are meeting their deadlines. Yes, Asana is one that has AI integration with it. We used Asana at both of the last companies I worked for over the last 2 decades, and Asana is a project management tool. It's not a planning and goal setting tool. That is a process that happens only periodically within an organization. And so that's, I think, where AI can be like a new partner. AI is already built into the project management tools, tracking what's happening at the moment, like it's evaluating emails and people are checking off completion of various tasks that have been assigned to them in the Asana task assignment system. But figuring out at the beginning of your next period, like for our life planning goals, that's okay, this coming year, 2025, what do I want to achieve in 2025? Sitting down and doing that forecast of where you want to be, and then figuring out how best to get there. That's really what Allie was using AI for when she provided this example. She said, here's what I want to achieve in 2025. Hey, I'm going to expand it out to, like, I'm going to include some goals that are 5-year type goals. And now, AI, I challenge you to give me an executable plan that gets me there. And it did that very well for her. I would love to see the detail on her plan, but I think that's a very personal and private thing. So I doubt that we're going to see specific examples of it.
Well, and this, if you go further into that conversation, it was something that she was doing with a friend, right? And so it was a fairly spontaneous, like, hey, no, AI can totally do this kind of thing. So let's just lay it out and do that. Um, as with everything, I don't think anybody has 5-year data on how AI helped them achieve their goals because that hasn't been around that long. And to Karl's point, the goal that I put in, I was like, okay, so let's first talk about 9 months. I feel like I can see pretty accurately 9 months. I mean, not fully accurately, but more accurately than I can see the massive changes that are going to occur between now and 5 years. So the 5-year goals become much more broad, right? Not the kind of detail specific. And again, for me, the having the AI interview me meant that we got out of my specifics and the way that I would describe them. Because the other thing about AI is that when you use language to describe something, you don't know the connotations that AI has associated with that, right? You're using words because they make sense to you, but depending on where they are in the neural map and how, like the patterns that are associated with those words, you don't know how much that pulls. Like there's a gravity effect with certain words, how much that pulls the connotation of what you've communicated in a direction that you did not mean to. Whereas when I'm being asked questions and then it reflects back to me, now I can see a little bit about what it felt pulled by, right?
I love the idea of, and I'm glad you continuously reinforce it on this show, of asking the AI to ask you questions and to refine its understanding of what it is that you really want to achieve in that session. I also like this aspect that came through in the experiment I did last night with this life goal organization, which was to simultaneously identify what the typical things that will deflect the achievement of that are. And I think this gets back to, in the context of OKRs and goal execution, when you do the thing that Karl suggested, which is, okay, at the end of the period, let's do a retrospective and let's figure out what happened. If you then supply a memory-equipped AI that's your business co-pilot with what it was that the humans thought obstructed the achievement of that goal, then in the next round of planning, the AI could be challenged to say, along with each of the objectives that you identify, indicate what the things are to be on the lookout for that could retard or flummox the achievement of those goals. And so you get to this picture of a really complete assistant who's organizing the whole process.
Right. And there have been a bunch of people in the comments talking about, well, I would need my goal to actually be like I need an every 2-hour reminder, or I need some more very assertive interpersonal time management kind of things. And those are possible, right? That's definitely possible. And AI is not quite there, but all the agentic features that we're talking about have to do with that kind of programming. And so that's likely coming soon down the line. Karl, what are you thinking about that?
I'm not quite sure. I was thinking more about, so my mind kind of went further off. It's like, okay, if I had an actual agent that set my goals for me, and then, I'm trying to think outside of what you'd normally do. So it's like, okay, accomplish these goals for me. Then essentially what an agent's supposed to do is accomplish those goals, come back and feedback and keep doing it until it accomplishes it. So wouldn't that mean that I can deploy hundreds of agents to be able to accomplish said goal or work up to a goal, and then feedback to it. And that could be as small as, hey, I'm a software engineer at said company, software engineer 1, and I want to accomplish these tasks, go task 1, to the point of I'm a founder of a company. And here's the goals I want accomplished. Tell me how long it'll take you, and then give a rough estimate and report back every 3 months. But forget 3 months, right? What Salman said, what you could do in months, it could take hours. Okay, can you report back to me in 3 hours what you have accomplished, and give me a feedback, give me an update, and then give me a feedback every 2 days of how this, and then and also tell me how you would, what are the mistakes you made or anything like that. So essentially you're compressing the timeline of a company in a week rather than in a year. So that's what got me thinking. And that would be the most insane thing I've ever heard of in terms of goal planning, reporting your OKRs and all that kind of stuff. But I do think, though, this is where, while an agent can notice how you still need the person to, it's where that creativity comes in, because you're like, oh, in 3 hours, you're like, oh, you did it this way, and here's what we did. It's like, oh, well, actually, I want to do it this way. And it's not what you would predict or what would be rational, but I want to take the Donald Trump method of creating chaos. I want to chaos this because of that chaos, or Elon Musk style, because I believe doing it this way, which is not the typical way of doing it, would lead me to said goal better. And I'm not sure if we'll be able to get systems right away. The ones that you're like, why would anybody do that? But it's actually genius at the end, because you're not going to get genius agents while they have reasoning capabilities at said level. I don't think you're going to have and I think this is where the human creativity still, right? We're like, oh, that's a little different. Let's do it that way instead of a typical way that a reasonable person would do it.
And that's something Sam mentioned in his interview with Gary Tam. Is that what you, from Y Combinator? He said, I think people are still underestimating the power of making, now I'm using my own words, but sort of making an all-in bet. And he was talking about the context of when OpenAI started, they had a very narrow, we're going to go toward AGI. Now it seems silly that it's narrow, but compared to what DeepMind was doing, they only had the ability to pick one path and barrel forward on that. Whereas Google had several paths and was doing a much larger approach. And that feels very similar, Karl, right? So we're just going to make a crazy pie in the sky. Yep. And all our resources are aligned in that direction. So
before we close, I just wanted to mention 2 things. One, we have some people in the chat who are coming in from LinkedIn, and I want to let those people know that on LinkedIn, you can't see what the other people are chatting and saying to us. I believe that's still the case. And if you come in through YouTube, you have a full view of every one of the people who are making comments in the chat stream on the show live. So YouTube works better for this particular format. And the other thing is, there's a question that was raised about which model is better at this kind of planning and goal management. And we haven't done a test, but my opinion is that the advanced reasoning in OpenAI's O1 preview would be better at thinking through, using its slow chain of thought, a process, at figuring out what it is that it needs to do in order to think about all of the factors that would be necessary to establish a plan for the future. Perplexity wouldn't be so good. This Perplexity's foundation is really in online research and citation research. Although it is using advanced models, you can select from Claude Sonnet 3.5 New and or GPT 4.0. So you would get that there, but I don't know, a test might be interesting. It might go out to the web and find some references that aren't in the training set, that are more recent around the question of goal planning and execution. So it might do just as good a job. But my intuition was to go to O1 preview.
Right. So there are two things about that. One is, I think with this and many other things as we're looking at moving forward, you want to always be considering having like a project passport or a project like summary so that you can take it. You have the kernel of everything that you need to be able to take a particular conversation into another model and give it the same foundation that it would have, right? And that's something that we do. That's something that we do in coding or those kinds of process goals, right? So you always have that, and you're always updating it based on the last piece of goal achievement or the last conversation that or retrospective that gave you more information about that. And the second thing is that Poe and ChatGPT are the two places that I know of where you can at this other custom GPT, right? You can at the perspective, what I'm going to call the perspective bots, and bring them into conversations. To my knowledge, Anthropic, Perplexity, Gemini, they don't have that. Gemini has gems, so maybe correct us if we're wrong. But those two particular places would allow you to bring that perspective in, like we were talking about, outsourcing those particular expertise or perspective, or how you're well-rounding your life goals. All right. This was a great conversation. Gwen was asking if there are custom GPT starter instructions. If you would like us to do some of that, we would love to hear from you. Yeah. All right. Tomorrow, thank you for spending your Thursday with us. Tomorrow, we are doing our 2-week retrospective. We're doing our own 2-week retrospective of the shows that we've done for the last 2 weeks and the life that we have lived in the age of AI for the last 2 weeks. And there's a lot. So I hope you come back and join us. And we've got some great shows for you next week as well. Until then, have a great Thursday.